Welcome everyone to the last installment this academic year of our University Distinguished Lecture Series. I'm Gregory Ropp. I'm Vice President of Research and Dean of Graduate Studies, and it's my pleasure to be the facilitator for this event. Now, we've had many great and interesting talks this year. I've been to almost all of them. I had to miss one. But the ones I've been to have been interesting, intriguing, thought-provoking. But today, we could have something very exciting. You see that title, Gold Rush. Doesn't that just stir up some emotions? Everyone knows what a gold rush is. A gold rush is something we've had, actually, there's been many gold rushes for centuries. Coming from the U.S., I think of the famous 49ers, not the football team, but the people who the football team is named after. 1849, the famous gold rush of California. But there are others. If you come from South Africa, there was a big one there. If you come from Brazil, there was a big one there. Anybody here from the Yukon? No, I didn't think so. Big one in the Yukon. What is a gold rush? Well, it's a frenzied migration of many fortune seekers to something that's exciting and can potentially make them rich in a moment's notice. That's why they rush to it. Typically, these things are marked by a buoyant feeling of kind of a free-for-all, that great things can happen. So I hope I'm not stealing your thunder too much and making an analogy to a gold rush, but I think that's what's happening in the science world with gold when you look at it at the nanoscale. So this, I think, indeed will be a very, very exciting talk. I'm looking forward to it. I know some of us here are working on various aspects of nanogold. So this looks to be a great talk. But without further ado, let me introduce our acting president and provost, Art Ellis, who will do the formal introduction.
Thanks very much, Greg, and welcome to everybody today. We're delighted to have you here at CityU for this distinguished lecture by Professor Jochen Feldman. And the gold rush and the nano gold rush spoke to me in a very similar way, actually, because from the States, we're very familiar with this idea that you had people who were very daring, very much risk takers, who would seize opportunities in this way. And one of the interesting connections with those California 49ers, as Greg described them, is that if you forward about 100 years later in the same state of California, that's a point in time and place where some people would say nanotechnology really began. Because there's a very famous speech that was given by the celebrated physicist Richard Feynman called "There's Plenty of Space at the Bottom." And what he meant by that was that there was no reason at that time, in 1959, when he gave this talk at Caltech, that you couldn't imagine that you would be able to assemble matter atom by atom and position it to create all kinds of new materials, all kinds of new devices. And it was actually very prescient of Feynman to think about those kinds of issues, kind of symbolic of the great physicist that he was. He even offered a couple of prizes for steps in that general direction that eventually he was able to give money away for because people really began to move in that direction. And shortly before he died was when the invention of the scanning probe microscopes were announced. And that really was the technology that allowed you to think about imaging individual atoms and positioning them next to one another or wherever you liked. So the nano gold rush, in that sense, I think is really a very good metaphor for what it is that nanotechnology has become, the kind of promise that it's developed over time. Professor Feldman is one of the leading practitioners of nanotechnology, particularly in the realms of photonics and optoelectronics, where the interplay of light and matter occurs. He has conducted pioneering work on optically pumped polymer lasers. He's recorded light scattering spectra from individual gold nanoparticles, created biosensors from a single gold nanoparticle, and listened to acoustic signals with single gold nanoparticles, which have been dubbed the nano ear. Professor Feldman's innovative work embodies the kind of daring and risk-taking that would have made those old gold miners, the 49ers, very proud. At CityU, we're trying to capture that kind of spirit with the Discovery Enriched curriculum that we're launching officially this fall. You recall the idea there is that we want every student who comes to CityU to have the opportunity to make some kind of original discovery or innovation or creative project. And we think that's going to serve them well when they go out into the world, because they're going to be confronted with all kinds of new situations. And we want them to feel that they can find new opportunities and seize those opportunities as they go forward. So Professor Feldman's research not only illustrates how we can think about this in a field like nanotechnology, which is very interdisciplinary, cutting across many traditional disciplines, but his work also serves as an inspiration to our staff and students in terms of demonstrating what can be accomplished with such an approach. So please join me in welcoming Professor Feldman.